Welcome back, everybody. Derek Sue, your East Oakland advocate. Well, some folks have been asking me, why won't I accept an apartment in a high rise? Well, there's several reasons. Number one, um, I've lived in high rises previously, and the reason number two, you're entrusting your life on people that you'll never meet or see or have the ability to ask questions. And that's what we're starting to see recently in the news. And just this past weekend, uh, a building partially collapsed in Iowa. And there are several people missing and presumed dead at this point. Three uh, people, in fact. And I bring this up because this isn't the first time. And if you remember last year, a building collapsed, literally a high rise in Florida, just in the middle of the night, and hundreds of people, or actually about 150 people, lost their lives in their sleep because the building collapsed in the middle of the night, about between 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, if I remember right. So um, all of those people died literally in their sleep, and they entrusted their life and rented and paid all that money to be killed in what they thought was something safe. And this is an aversion that I've always had. And I grew up in the building trades, and so I'm aware of uh, structural deficiencies, we'll say, and how things can uh, get worse over time, uh, and then it compounds the problem, and it gets to a point where, yeah, like we've seen, um, we saw a building collapse. Yeah, over half a building, um, high rise there in Florida collapse. And then locally, we've had not so much a building collapse, but we've had failures, a balcony failure. This was, let's see, uh, in 2015, June 16, 2015. And this was in Berkeley. A balcony collapsed because there were a lot of celebrants out there on that balcony, and it wasn't so much that uh, it was it wasn't designed for the weight. It was designed for the weight, but a lack of maintenance, and it wasn't fixed correctly. And so what ended up happening, seven died in that two-story fall from when that balcony fell off of the side of the building, and six were injured. And these were all students celebrating a birthday. And uh, what can I say? I lived in a condo that was built in the 50s, and there were structural issues with that building. And folks say, well, um, did you like it? Well, it was acceptable, we'll say, in the fact that I had a top floor and not one of the floors that would be sandwiched in the event of a catastrophic failure of the building. And so uh, that's why I don't like high rises, because I don't want to be the meat in the sandwich. And that sandwich, when it comes down, few people will survive on the top floor, most likely, but it's highly unlikely that very many people would survive with the building collapsing all around them, and then everything pancaking on top of them, kind of like what happened in the uh, 89 Loma Prieta earthquake when the Cypress freeway collapsed and pancaked the section below, and it didn't fall to the street, but it pancaked all the vehicles. Several hundred vehicles were pancaked uh, uh, that were heading in the northbound direction, or the western direction, is what they called it back then, of the westbound 580, the Cypress structure. Um, and same thing happens with buildings, and that's why I have a real high aversion to high rises. I lived in the Essex, and again, you have to tote all your groceries, your food, uh, to up to the your unit. I was on the 10th floor. It's a lot of work, uh, and yeah, there's elevators, but it stops, whenever there's a need or somebody's getting off. So it's a slow process from the garage, and the garage only had one parking space, and I made sure my wife used the indoor parking space. Wasn't really that safe, because while there were cameras, there were no real guards with that was going to do anything. But there was a guard at the door, so that they're watching who goes into the parking lot. So that was early on at the Essex. I don't know if that kind of service is still there, but it was part of the package when I was there, and they called that luxury living. Uh, and pretty far from it. And there was no washer dryer, and so we had to literally uh, tote all of our laundry out. Fortunately, back at the house that I was working on, our future home, there on Santa Clara Avenue, I had a washer dryer there that was hooked up and operational, and so I just took our laundry to our home and did laundry there, and that saved us a lot of money, because in the condo we had a washroom, but it was a pay per use uh, situation, a coin operated washer, coin operated dryer, and like in most cases, some of the equipment breaks down occasionally, and then uh, you know but fortunately that was a condo situation. We canceled the contract with one contractor, got another contractor who serviced the equipment and was using newer equipment, uh, so fewer problems when we left that particular condo. When we moved into the Essex, uh, that was my wife's choice, wasn't my choice. She wanted to stay close to work, which was not a problem for me. I was working locally anyway on some investigations for human trafficking at the time, and so anyway, the high rise was good if I was being tailed or being watched, because they couldn't get in that building. But the other place, the home that I was working on and making much safer, more earthquake safe, uh, you know, they didn't know about that one so much. And then it was '04 where we had the home buttoned up enough where we moved out of the Essex, and my wife was never so happy to leave that place, because it had a lot of issues. It was a newer building, but there were a lot of uh, negatives about living in a high rise, and everything associated with high-rise type living, and we're not high-rise living people. You have to be in that kind of mindset. We're the kind of folks that need some open space. We need a yard so that whether our children or friends, we can go hang out in the yard and be comfortable. Yeah, at the Essex, yeah, we had that uh, kind of ability. You had to RSVP the use of the clubhouse, RSVP the use of the gas grills. So there was a lot of negatives about living like that. And when we moved into the single family home there on Santa Clara Avenue, it was a night and day difference. The loading, unloading of groceries and everything else coming into the home was much easier because we didn't have to use an elevator to move everything. And literally, the driveway backed up pretty close to the kitchen, and it made it real easy to load and unload groceries and anything else. Also, we had secured parking right there in our driveway, which also was directly underneath our bedroom. And so, if somebody was tampering with our vehicles, number one, our dogs would be barking like crazy, which they did. And then I also have a window which looks right down into the driveway, and I could easily pick off anybody from the bedroom window there because the vehicles are directly underneath that window. And I had security lights all in the driveway. But anyway, some other negatives about living in high rises is that in the condo, you get sometimes you get to hear things that you don't want to hear from your neighbors. In the case of the condo below us, when we first moved in, we had young college age females that lived there, and they would party and come home 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, especially on Friday, Saturday nights. And my wife's son, unfortunately, his bedroom happened to be over one of the sexually active females below. And um, he would, my stepson would come over to our bedroom and say, "Hey, you need to come here, come into my room and hear what I'm hearing." And then, I go there and my wife and I were hearing. It's like, yeah, okay. There's no insulation obviously between downstairs and our unit, and then uh, so noise is a problem. And then there was also another issue. This was an older building, like I said, built in the early 50s, and so some of the old cast iron pipes had rusted through, and that's what had happened. And uh, whenever we took a shower, our neighbor downstairs, their ceiling took a shower too, and we never knew that, and it was through the condominium insurance, and they had to, you know, access our unit to fix the uh, rusted out P-trap drain in the tub, and then fix all of that. It didn't cost us anything because of the condominium insurance that covered that damage down below. But it's just the inconvenience that you have somebody going in and out of your home that you have no control of throughout the day. And then you have other types of noise, um, and there are a lot of disadvantages. And then I have to also say there are a lot of disadvantages of home ownership because there's a tremendous amount of maintenance. You don't have maintenance people to fix all the little things around the house or even in the garden. when we lived in a HOA, we were only responsible for maintaining the inside of our home. Everything outside was maintained and landscaped by the HOA. So we didn't have to do any lawn mowing unless it was in our private yard. In our private yard, that was the only thing that we were responsible for. But we also had the option where we could pay the gardening service for maintaining our garden, which I didn't do. I could do that myself. But again, it's there's a trade-off in everything, but the biggest thing is that if it's a single family home or a side-by-side duplex, you have a yard, and that's important for a lot of families. It was extremely important for me. I don't know about you, but for myself, I like to have a yard. I like to do a little bit of gardening, growing tomatoes and green beans, lettuce, radishes, things like that in the late spring into the fall months, and have some fresh vegetables. And there's nothing like having a really good, ripe, vine grown tomato fresh off the vine in a summertime salad. So, and you can't buy these in the store. And then you can grow a wide variety of tomatoes. So that's why I prefer a single family home over a condominium, apartment, high rise situation, because you don't have an area where you can grow your own vegetables. Also, the thing with a single family home, at the time it was a consideration, but I hadn't done it yet because you know, we ended up not staying there. But I had seriously considered installing solar and going off-grid solar completely. And so that was something, if we had stayed there, that would have been added to the home. But first of all, I would have had to spend nearly $20,000 to have the old roofing taken off, and it was 3 layers thick. So it was uh, the original roof when the home was built was still there, and so all those layers would have to come off to relieve a tremendous amount of weight off the building, because that was, if I remember right, it was nearly 4 inches thick at one point, just the asphalt tiles that were up there. So uh, new roof would have to have been put on, and then on top of that, then the solar. And solar architecture was very different back then too. It isn't as easy and safe as it is to do now. Um, but Another reason why I like single family homes, and I prefer a single family home, is the building codes. The building codes are very specific to single family buildings, and single family homes are a little more flexible because they don't have the weight like a multi-story building, and so that you have to have specialized foundations to support all of that weight. Is literally what, if you've heard of the news, the entire city, the island, Manhattan Island, um, in New York, is sinking 1 millimeter a year because there are so many heavy buildings on the the island. The island uh, is being crushed by the buildings and everything built on uh, the New York Island and Manhattan Island. So uh, here we have San Francisco. So uh, San Francisco, very similar situation. We have the Millennium Tower, a very expensive luxury uh, condominiums, where Joe Montana just recently sold his unit. And these are leaning that because they didn't do a good job, and they didn't plan it out right to go all the way down to bedrock. Now that they've made corrections, and hopefully this permanent fix takes care of that. And another, because all these people were paying millions and millions of dollars for the square footage on the Millennium Tower, and they have no control over it because somebody went, oops, I didn't calculate right, or I didn't maintain the code. And that's something that has always been a problem. And one of the reasons why I prefer buildings that are uh, constructed and built to at least 1974 codes, because in 1974, in 1972, we had the very, very dangerous aluminum wiring that was installed in a lot of homes. And so in 1974, that was outlawed and banned nationally. And so that's why I prefer homes and buildings, created and constructed after 1974. You have much more modern construction, better foundations, steel reinforced concrete, and a, a whole host of newer and safer building techniques and standards. So anyway, um, I just wanted to say uh, some of those old constructed buildings from the late 40s, 50s is coming back to haunt us right now because they're literally in disrepair. They're falling. They were created in a time where the building codes uh, were different, and they weren't created for what is actually going on in the region, such as earthquakes, earth movements, fires, hurricanes, tornadoes. So a lot of these things have changed the way we construct nationally and regionally, and these are all important new safety factors. And in fact, probably the one of the most horrifying things that I ever saw locally was back in the late 80s. I think it was 1982, because we had a real big storm, kind of like the winter that had just passed. But up the hill from us, from where my parents' home was, there on Buenaventura, at the very top. Uh, that was that wasn't Delmont, but Simpson. It was Simpson up there, and a home literally slid away from its foundation because of so much rain. It wasn't secured to the foundation, and it was literally built on the side of a slope on a hill. It didn't have stilts, but it wasn't bolted to the foundation, and also the foundation failed because so much water had washed away the dirt underneath the foundation and severely weakened it. And then also, it wasn't a concrete and steel reinforced foundation. In fact, that foundation, I've taken people up there and showed them the old foundation. It still sits there along with the former driveway for that home up on that site. And I mean, the view is incredible there, but that site can never be rebuilt, redeveloped ever again. So, folks, I don't know about you. You can let me know why you may think and feel that multi level buildings, multi story buildings are safe, and why you may choose that is sufficient for you and your lifestyle. Let me know in the comments what you think and why multi level multi-story apartments and condos may be a better fit for you. I just explained to you why it's not a fit for me. Thanks for joining me. We'll be right back.